Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Thursday, October 30th, 2025, and another beautiful day here in the Macedon Ranges. And little fella's loving it this morning. A little bit warmer, no breath of any air, of any wind, I should say, at all. So fantastic. A little bit happening in the last 24 hours. We've had the press conference with NIKITA ZERAFA and Michael Zarafa, and I'll get to that in a sec. Interesting, let's just say. Interesting. But firstly, let's get on to this day, and it's just one big event today. It is the anniversary, the 51st anniversary of the Rumble in the Jungle. Muhammad Ali and George Foreman took place on this day in 1974, and one of the most famous fights of all time. Movies made about it, documentaries made about it, just a massive event in the history of boxing, and as I said, it happened 51 years ago. So going into the fight, Ali was 44-2, 31 knockouts. Foreman was 40-0, 37 knockouts. Foreman 25 years of age, Ali 32 years of age. The weights 220 for Foreman and 216 for Ali, which is really strange considering that back then that was a big heavyweight. These days it's actually quite small. We've got guys between sort of 240, sort of 270 really. And come here, buddy. And back then, you remember come here, buddy, or what the size of Foreman looked like back, and they looked like he was a monster. But in fact, he was obviously quite tall, but only 220 pounds. So not the biggest heavyweight compared to today. But back then, I think they said there was close to 1 billion people watched it. Now I know that seems a little bit far-fetched considering back then there was only 4 billion people in the world. But I think at the one time they said there was 50, I don't know how all this has worked out, whether in total 1 billion people watch it, I don't know. This is just what it says. But at the one time, I think there was 50 million watching on pay-per-view. They had with the closed circuit and all that back then, so it's hard to get the exact numbers. But I suppose what is a fact is that a vast majority of the world was watching this fight. So it was for the undisputed heavyweight title. Ali was a 4-1 underdog, and we all remember the famous rope-a-dope where Foreman, who had demolished Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Ali had struggled in his fights with the same fighters. Obviously, he'd been beaten by both of those guys, although I don't think, what was the record there? So he had been beaten by Norton at this stage. So all odds were against the greatest, Muhammad Ali, but he pulled out one of the most famous strategies of all time by letting George Foreman punch himself out, and such a clever fighter. And looking back, it's hard to sort of see how or what just a dumb strategy it was by George Foreman and his team. The strategy, just go out there and just keep throwing punches until your opponent goes down. Now that obviously was working for him against guys who came at him, but when he had someone that backed up and had the IQ of Muhammad Ali and just made him miss, tied him up, just leant on him, did everything he could to tire him out and negate him, and it come to fruition in the 8th round. I don't think he'd sort of won many rounds up until the 8th, but obviously it's a 15-round fight, so he knew what he was doing. Even apparently his corner didn't really know what he was up to, which I'm not sure whether that's the case, but who knows. But in the 8th round, Ali with his back to the ropes and Foreman leaning on him, again trying to club him with those punches. He just turned him, got him off balance, threw a combination, finished with a beautiful right hand to the head, and down went George Foreman, and he was counted out. And what a sight it was, and just even the build up to the fight. And you've probably seen the Ali movie, the effect he had on the people of Zaire, and how George Foreman was the bully and the villain. And the fight was actually almost cancelled, if you can believe that, because George Foreman sustained a cut. I think it was about 4 to 6 weeks before the fight. Might have been a little bit longer, actually. And he wanted to go home. And the promoter, Don King, said, do not let this guy get on a plane, because if he goes back to America, actually it mightn't have been Don King, he promoted it, but it might have been one of his advisors or someone said, do not let this man get on an aeroplane and go back to the States, because he's not coming back. And they convinced him to stay in Zaire. He went through with the fight. Would have been pretty hard for him though, wouldn't it? I mean, two African-American fighters going back to, I suppose they called it at the time, the homeland, or whatever you might want to call it. And Ali being so embraced and Foreman just being shunned by so many. So you could probably understand he was feeling a little bit upset by the whole thing. And maybe that had something to do with his strategy as well, about just going out there and just not caring and trying to demolish Ali with one big shot. But it wasn't a very clever strategy in a 15-round fight, in the oppressive heat that was over there, just to go out there with no real strategy at all, except just to bomb him out. Wasn't great in hindsight, but Ali, the master, the magician, whatever you might want to call him, as they say, dragged him out into deep waters and then drowned him in the 8th round with just a beautiful combination that's sort of been immortalised in boxing folklore ever since. Come here, man. Sorry, I'm just out of focus there. Where are we? Get back in. There we go. Just got out of shot there for a second. So I think just looking at some of the figures now, I think they said the revenue of the fight was, I think they said it was like 100 and something million, but with inflation, it was equivalent to about 640 million. Now that would actually, this is the revenue of the fight, that would actually take it past the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. You can get your head around that. So that's I mean, inflation, I suppose it's debatable how exactly it would affect it, but that's what they're sort of saying, 640. Now the Pacquiao and Mayweather fight earned $600 million. So just an amazing stat of that fight. So that was on this day in 1974. Now, on to the press conference yesterday. So the official announcement came that NIKITA ZERAFA and Michael Zarafa will lock horns on Friday, January 16th, 2026. Now, as I said in my video, probably was about a week ago now, that the December spot or the slot that it was going to be in mid-December will most likely be taken up by TSZYU in his comeback fight, which has pushed back the NIKITA and Zarafa fight. And it probably worked in well with the car crash. I think they said that NIKITA had spent, I think, 10 days out of the gym, so it was probably made sense to put it back until January. But I'll tell you what is it now? It's 30th of October. So we're looking at, what's that, 2.5, so it's about 11 weeks. It's a fair old way out to actually announce the fight. Now, I know we've all been talking about it. It's probably the worst hidden secret in boxing that the fight's going to happen, but it doesn't sort of make usually a lot of sense that 11 weeks out, or even it might even be 12. I think it's 11 weeks out that you would be announcing the fight. Normally, it's sort of 6 to 8 weeks they'll announce the fight. But what I'm thinking of is that obviously, as I said, it's the worst kept secret in boxing, but they want to get it announced firstly because there's so many rumours going on about the fight. Is it happening? Is it not happening? Is Tim stepping in? And all these sorts of things going on. I've just got a feeling they wanted to nip it in the bud and announce it now. Just to say, all right, it's on. Can we move on? And also, in regards to Tim, to maybe clear the air before the announcement of his fight, which will probably be in another week or two, I reckon. So I reckon what they're doing is just putting to bed that NIKITA will fight Michael. It wasn't a big fanfare yesterday. It wasn't a big press conference. They'd obviously done really well with the backdrop, but we didn't have undercard fighters. We didn't have all the razzmatazz. It was looked like it had been put together pretty quickly. And I reckon that is, as I said, just to clear the air, to say, look, the fight's set. Can we just move on now? Clear the air for Tim's announcement, which is, I mean, that's only, 6 or 7 weeks away, which makes sense. I'd say that'll be announced. It could even be as early as next week, who knows? But that's what I think's happened, why they've announced the fight now instead of waiting till, maybe mid-November, even late November. But that seems to be the case. So the press conference itself, look, it was as I said, it wasn't the biggest press conference. It looked like it was in some ballroom or some meeting room or something of whatever hotel they were at, and only the two main event fighters there, Michael and Nikita. Neither one of them looked overly excited about being there, to be honest, did they? And George Roach, aka Don King, he didn't don the wig yesterday. I didn't think. I thought he was actually quite good in what he was saying. I know there was a few little quips in there, but overall I thought he was pretty well behaved. I think this is a fight that he doesn't really need to build up too much. He hasn't got an opponent sitting next to Nikita or next to Zarafa that they've got to really build up, because maybe the resume or ability is not great, and he needs to do whatever he can to pump the fight up for us Aussie fans, but there's no need to do it for this fight, which I think he was the reason why he was so, I won't say subdued, but in comparison to some of his other press conferences, he was a little bit low key and just sort of stated the facts. And maybe when they do the big announcement, which I think is next week, or the week after, they're going to actually announce the undercard and the venue and all that sort of stuff. Now, the front runner as far as the venue goes is Brisbane. Apparently, Nikita doesn't want to fight in Melbourne. Michael doesn't want to fight in Sydney. I'm not sort of, I don't think I'm being mean here, but I really, if I'm being honest, I don't think Michael would actually have a choice. I think, one, he's chased his fight. Well, he hasn't chased his fight, as he's chased the fight with Tim, but I would think that No Limit would say, if you want this fight, these are the terms. And I was actually surprised that they've actually bent and made this a catch weight. I wouldn't have been surprised if they had said, look, no, you're going to do this at 154, or we don't do it at all. You're going down, if you want to fight Nikita, you go down to 154 and fight him. But I think it's good, it's fair that they've made it at 157 in between. And look, I don't think either fighter really, to be fair, really cares too much about the venue, but there's all this posturing that sort of goes on. So looks like they'll put it in Brisbane at a neutral venue. I mean, the word all along was that it might be on the Gold Coast. Who knows, it might still land there, but at this stage, I think they're looking at Pat Rafter Arena in Brisbane. And 157, not sure what the purses and all that'll be. I'm sure that'll be disclosed at some stage, but you would think that Nikita will earn the majority of the money, maybe a 60-40 split or something like that, if they're kind to Michael. And of course, the poster is ZERAFA versus Zarafa, which Michael pointed out a couple of times. He's not the A side. Of course, he's not the A side. I mean, I suppose, based on his resume, he's standing in world boxing. I suppose you could make the argument that it should be Zarafa versus ZERAFA, but this is Australia, and there's no way that ZERAFA is going to be relegated to the B side. So, not that there is a B side in it, really. Well, to some extent anyway. But the press conference itself, started off very, very low key. Look, let's just say if it started in first gear, I think we got to just about into the third gear. It wasn't the most explosive press conference, and you probably don't get that when Nikita is involved. You normally get something when Michael is, but even he started out, he was the first to speak. And he just said, look, it's good that I'm getting a zoo, not the zoo that he wanted. But he's very grateful to the usual stuff to get the call up, and he was very respectful towards Nikita. Nikita sat there almost in a bit of a trance. It really did take him a while to get going, and he probably got going as much as he probably can as Nikita, who as the press conference got on, but it was very slow out of the blocks, was Nikita. He did interject in Michael's one of his comments that why was he being so nice, and he was probably right, to be honest. But I mean, it's really hard to get pissed at Nikita and try and razz him up, or whatever you might want to call it. I mean, I think he just knew that if he started with some of the antics that he's had in the past, that he'd be sort of looking a little bit silly, because he'd be doing it by himself. He wouldn't have a dance partner, and Nikita would just not engage. You can just sort of see that. So I think it was actually a pretty good strategy from Michael. Just tell it the way it is. Let your fists do the talking in the ring. I'm sure there'll be more and more sort of spite into the equation as we get closer to the fight. I've got a feeling once the adrenaline starts to go, a couple of weeks before the fight, you might see Michael slip into another gear. But at the moment, he seemed quite relaxed. And as I said, was quite respectful towards Nikita. Nikita was then asked to speak and didn't really give a lot at the start, did he? Did not give a lot. He just said, again, the usual things. Michael actually raised I can't remember at what point it was, but probably that got sort of Nikita going. I think it was might have been one of the first questions he was asked about, because Michael said something about the legacy. He's got a chance to save the zoo name, and I don't understand why Michael continues with this narrative, and not just Michael, but a lot of the press. The zoo name. What is it about the zoo name? And I wouldn't have begrudged Nikita, said, I don't give a shit about what you guys think about the zoo name. I'm my own guy. I'm only worried about NIKITA Zoo. What Tim does and what my dad did, that's them. I share the last name, but I don't share, the same body as those guys. So this whole thing with Michael saying about the saving the zoo name, I don't get it. And you could tell that Nikita was a bit like, well, what do I say to this? And I thought he actually responded okay. It was pretty blunt what he said, but I don't begrudge him by saying, hey, look, I'm not Tim, I'm not my dad, I'm just NIKITA Zoo trying to make my way, and that's all I'm trying to do. This is not saving anything. This is just me trying to be the best that I can. So I wish I would sort of forget that narrative about the zoos being a collective, because they're just not. They're their own people, their own. Well, Costa had his career, Tim's got his career, Nikita's got his career, and I just don't know or understand why it's this constant thing about the zoo name. And as I said, I think Nikita answered that pretty well. The experience factor came up, and obviously Michael holds the advantage in that area. He questioned Nikita's chin, or Ben Damon asked him about his comments about Nikita's chin, and he's right. He said out of the 11 fights he's had, he's probably been rocked in 10 of them. And what did he say against some fighters who weren't even the best light middleweights in their gym? That just those little things you'll see sneak in, just a little remarks you'll see sneak in from Michael, just to test Nikita just a little bit, just to check him whenever he needs to. So I thought that was a little clever little comment, but he's probably right. Nikita has been rocked a few times in his career, and Michael backs himself to finish the job if he does get Nikita hurt. So that was an interesting one. There was obviously the barbs about the breast milk and all that sort of stuff. That was bound to come up at some stage, wasn't it? But Nikita did say that he was not impressed by the comments that Michael had made about his family. That's probably one thing I think that Nikita probably should let go as well. The comments about that Michael made to Tim about the Mickey Hatton comment. If you didn't see that, he said when he fought Tim, he was going to be Mickey Hatton, and of course Ricky Hatton, the late Ricky Hatton, beat Costa and retired him. So he said, I'm going to be Mickey Hatton. Look, it was just a remark from Michael, again, to get under the skin of Tim, which he did do, by the way. He succeeded. But I just think they've probably got to let that one lie. I mean, Nikita did say that his family was disrespected and everything. I don't see it that way. I think it was just a pretty clever little grab from Michael, if I'm being honest. But Nikita obviously didn't see it that way. He said he's a family man, very family orientated, and he took offence to it. Whatever. I mean, you're gonna take offence at whatever you choose to, I suppose. But I certainly didn't think it was offensive. I actually thought it was pretty funny and a nice little quip from Michael. But anyway, at the time. But then the inevitable question come up from Ben Damon. I thought he'd done a really, really good job up until that point. And it was brought up about him pulling out of the TSZYU fight. And he said, I think he asked Nikita, do you think it's a serious risk, or have you got serious doubts that Michael might pull out or not turn up to the fight? And I thought, with all due respect to Ben, I thought it was amateur hour, to be honest, to ask that question. I think it's just a ridiculous question. I think we've been over that 100 times. I don't see the sense in asking it, because as I've said numerous times, and I've had numerous things to say about Michael over the journey, but one thing I will not say is that he pulled out of that fight because he was scared. And that's just fact. Come on, mate. We better get past here. There's tradies everywhere here. Come on, buddy. But that is one thing I just don't agree with, and I'll never agree with. You got guys, and Michael pointed out himself. He said, look, I've gone to Russia and fought their undefeated champion over there. I've gone to England and fought Cal Brook. I've gone to Las Vegas and fought Erizandi Lara. I've gone to all these different places to fight in the backyard. He said, I'm not really too concerned about, I wasn't too concerned about getting on a flight, an hour's flight up to Newcastle from Melbourne. He got some bad advice from his then team, and which was resolved legally and or in the courts, whatever it was. And someone like Michael Zarafa, after doing what he's done, is not going to be scared to fly to Newcastle to fight TSZYU. So I would hope that they would drop that narrative, and also not just the reporters and everyone else, and even TSZYU, but all the fans out there. I mean, you see it on, and look, as I said, I've had numerous things to say about Michael Zarafa, but I just think this whole thing about him running away scared, I just think, or I would wish or hope that the fans would just drop it, because it's just not the case. He got bad advice during the COVID era by his team, and he decided, or they decided as a team or a collective, or maybe the team decided and he just went along with it, I don't know, that it wouldn't be in the best interest to fly to Newcastle. Lots of stories going back and forth about the whole thing, but I suppose it's the end of the day, he didn't pull out because he was scared of TSZYU. Let's just get that straight. Let's just put that to bed. And as I said, with Ben, always really good at asking the questions and being a host of these press conferences and the fight nights, but that is just a silly question, and I think he should drop it. I think he should just let it lie, and everyone else should as well. So Nikita said, oh, look, I have been told to lock the doors. I mean, again, I got no problem with that. That's just a little quirky little comment from Nikita. If Michael wants to throw a few little nuggets in there, I'm sure Nikita can as well. But I thought he handled himself okay. Michael did make a good point that he said, with all due respect, because that's what it was. Nikita asked why he was not being the villain. He said he picks and chooses his times to be the victim and the antagonist. And he said, what's going on today? He said, mate, I've got no beef with you, which is going to be hard to build up the fight, because that is the strength of Michael Zarafa. As I said before, I'm sure that will change as we get closer to the fight. But he just, look, I've got no beef with you. He said, I'll be the bad guy if you want me to be. So I thought Nikita did okay. I'm not sure how we would have went if Michael Zarafa had hit him with both barrels, as far as the way he carries himself at press conferences. He can be quite witty, Michael. He's been through this many, many times, through Jeff Horn, TSZYU, Isaac Harbin. He's been through some of these bigger fights. And he has got the gift of the gab, which unfortunately Nikita doesn't. But I thought he was okay, Nikita. But again, I sort of worry if Michael decides to turn the volume up of how Nikita will react. I think if I was his team, I'd be saying, hey, look, just play everything with a straight bat. Don't try and get in a tit for tat, because he's not going to win. Not going to win any tit for tat arguments or this trash talking. Just be yourself and just let him do it all, and you just smile and just state the facts, and with basic one-liners. I think that would be my advice to him. So look, it was an eventful press conference as it got going more and more. As I said at the start, it was a very low-key one to get started, but by the end of it, we had a little bit of action anyway. And then when they faced off, I was actually surprised at how Nikita ZERAFA actually matched up towards Michael. I mean, Michael's a pretty big middleweight, and I thought that, Nikita was probably going to have to come down in weight a fair bit. I think he's the type of fighter that will probably blow out a little bit in between fights. He's just got that body type. But he looked pretty good height-wise. There's probably an inch or two in it between the two guys. I thought that obviously Nikita looked a lot thicker. Michael always keeps himself in really good condition, so he'd probably only a couple of kilos over fight weight now, where Nikita would probably be quite some amount of kilos over. So I thought that the face-off was good. It was nice and relaxed. Michael, normally at these first face-offs, he normally goes pretty hard as far as getting right in their face, right in there and right up close with the little bit of a scowl, just to try and offset him. But he didn't do that yesterday. Again, he was quite polite, I thought, if you might want to call it that, with Nikita. But again, I'm sure that will change as we get close to the fight. One bit of action that did actually happen after the weigh-in, the press conference, is our man Jay McAllister. doing great things. Jay's been obviously on my show numerous times. I've caught up with him numerous times overseas as well as he covers the fights. Does a great job, by the way. Always goes to the big fights and covers them, interviews everybody. Very, very good at what he does, Jay, and really puts himself out there to get good content. Well, apparently he had a little bit of a history with Michael. Michael wasn't too impressed with something that had been said along some stage. Apparently they used to get on pretty well, and I think Jay must have said something or retweeted something or whatever the hell it is when Michael fell out or pulled out of the TSZYU fight, and had shared something, and Michael took offence to it, and they hadn't spoken sort of since, and no interviews had been granted. And there was a bit of how you going at the aftermath of the press conference. And Jay's a pretty big sort of guy, you know, and I think he could probably handle himself, probably not to the extent that Michael ZERAFA can, of course, but who knows what could have happened if it had got physical. But Jay certainly didn't back down, had his say. Michael had his say. I think he threatened to knock him out at one stage, and it's just the things that goes on behind the scenes. The only thing I would probably say to Michael, I understand that you're not going to like everything that all journalists say about you or whatever, and I've actually copped it from Michael once before as well, but I think you've got to have a thicker skin. This is a guy that doesn't let too much faze him in the lead up to fights. I just think he needs probably a little bit thicker skin when it comes to journalists. Journalists are like they do with every single fighter. I know Michael probably thinks he's been singled out a little bit and targeted by a lot of these people, but it's their opinion. Let them have it. If you don't want to give them an interview, well, I suppose you can do that, but I just think it's been a little bit petty that you sort of bar journalists from. And I suppose, look, if you had issues with every journalist in Australia that had something negative to say at some stage, well, you'd be doing no interviews at all. So I get that he's not going to like some things that get said, and I understand completely too, especially at that time, that the Tim pullout was very emotional for a lot of people, including him. He said he copped it from everywhere. His mental health was at a bit of a low. But yeah, I think at some stage you got to say, well, you know, you're in the business. You need to do media. Jay gets around to all the big fights, as I said, and does some really good interviews. So I think when you're at least sort of maybe call and say, hey, this is the problem I've got, and sort it out, and not sort of come to these sort of instances at press conferences. I don't know. But boxing, never a dull moment is there. Never a dull moment. But anyway, that's Michael. That's his personality, and it's probably what makes him super competitive in the ring, because he's super competitive outside the ring as well. But anyway, so that was the press conference. January 16th, it all goes down. I think tickets are on sale next week when they announce the full undercard and the venue, of course. And we're going to have a pretty good build-up to January 16th. But first, we will have the TSZYU announcement, as I said, probably as early as next week, I would say. They want to get that really flying as well. And no doubt they're working on opponents and all that at the moment. So that is it. A couple of big shows to look forward to. We've got Liam Paro and Paddy Donovan to announce at some stage as well, once they sort the purses out and location. And that will be announced as well. And we'll have 3 massive fights, 4 if you include the Jai Pattaya event as well. So plenty going on in Aussie boxing. So guys, that's going to do it for today. As always, give me your comments. How did you see the press conference? And we'll catch you tomorrow.